Hey guys, today we are going to dive into some looking at gear, what you guys should be looking at when you're approaching what you want to purchase and buy for self-defense. And we'll get into a little bit of faith talk at the end. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hey man, how we doing today?
Good, brother. What's going on?
Oh, just enjoying my day off. I had a crazy week last week, and we still got an episode in, but it was pretty insane.
Well, that's what you get for having a job. So.
I guess we just need to get successful. Then
here we go. We are on the right path.
Yeah.
We'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
Please support us.
Yes.
We don't have to have a job.
Yeah. Shameless plug. Hit our social medias. Check out our website, righteoussavages.com, and on YouTube and Apple. Like our page on Apple. Give us a 5-star review if you like the content, because it helps the algorithms. And on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, like and share our content. It does help us, so we appreciate it. Today, I think we're going to get into some cool subjects, some fun stuff. We both are gun guys, and we love the shooting sports and all of that stuff that goes along with it, outdoors stuff, knives, everything. So I think it's going to be really cool to kind of dive into what our thoughts are when it comes to approaching how we select gear, how we purchase gear, and all of that stuff. Real quick, I want to ask kind of a question for the audience. If you were all of a sudden diagnosed with a terminal illness and you had to have a surgery, and this surgery is a 50-50 shot of you surviving, would you want a doctor who has a long resume pedigree of success at that specific surgery, who has been a reliable surgeon, has years of experience and proven track record of being a successful surgeon? Or would you want the cheapest guy, the guy that maybe is fresh out of medical school, has never done any of this kind of stuff, doesn't have any kind of proof? Yeah, you might actually luck out and get a good surgeon, but are you willing to stake your life on that for your survival, for actually getting through what you're facing? And I think that we can apply that to what we're talking about today, because it is kind of the same kind of thing. So
so we can kind of categorize our gear into a couple different groups. One group is the stuff that your life is going to depend on it. And then the other group are the things that are just kind of the Gucci whatever, just kind of fun, something new to test around, and maybe it's not going to be for self-defense or personal defense. But make no mistake about it, kind of where we should be starting out is in that group of your life is going to depend on it. We see, over my long law enforcement career, obviously I've seen just thousands of different types of gear and gadgets and whatever that people get interested in because they've seen it on Instagram or their buddy told them about it or saw it on YouTube, and they go out and buy it. And it's kind of tough for civilians because you're not in that world. You're not living in it. You're just seeing it on the internet. Maybe you don't get to the range a whole lot, and it's kind of a lot of trial and error with gear and equipment. So I get that aspect of it for sure. But I don't also want to underestimate how important it is that if you're just getting into training and shooting and getting into shooting a handgun, man, you have got to start off on the right track. Yeah. We cannot shortcut this. We cannot just go for the most exciting thing out there on the interwebs, and you're going to have to start off with a professional trainer somewhere. Doesn't mean it has to be a cop necessarily. Cops, are not the best of everything just because they're cops. But you got to get a hold of somebody that is a professional in the industry of whatever you're trying to get good at, and get some advice, get some direction. You cannot just make this up on your own. I've seen a lot of people come out to the range, and they've definitely made it up on their own. They've shot maybe 100 rounds in their life, and they've just showed up to do a lesson with a $4,000 gun and gun belt, and they've skipped way ahead of we should be at step 1, and you're at step 95.
Yeah.
And so we can't fast forward through that. So, and especially from your point of view of coming out to the range 3 or 4 years ago and kind of getting started at least in the instructor world a little bit. It's your perspective is interesting too, to see kind of how you progress through trying to figure out what to get. Like, so John, how did you go through that? How did you figure out what was going to work for you, and what was exactly quality stuff?
So anytime I'm buying something, this could be anything from like cars to guns to knives, I'm always looking at a few things. I'm a big durability, longevity guy, like on everything. So my vehicles, I tend towards the vehicles that have the long track record of being durable. And so I kind of approached my journey with guns as that. And I own some rifles. I even had an AR-15. I didn't really have that much as far as handguns when I first, basically about 5-6 years ago was when I really started getting into handguns. And I talked to a buddy of mine who was said he was an instructor. I'm not so sure he was an instructor, but I was working with him at the time we talked, and he did turn me on to a really nice Sig Sauer P226 and heavy piece of metal gun, but a very solid gun. And so that started my journey, but I started looking at what everyone else was kind of carrying. What I saw, I look at military, I look at police, and the police, most guys are carrying Glocks, or they're carrying a Springfield, or they're carrying something along, the really Gucci cops. They like those staccatos. But, but I was looking at that, and what was something that was going to be reliable, because we're talking about something that I'm going to use to defend my life with, as opposed to something that I'm just going to take out and plink. So I'm always kind of trying to approach it from that perspective. Not everybody has that perspective, but that's kind of the way that I always approach those things.
Right. So as an instructor, I've always tried to convince people that what we're about to do here is a journey. And you start off slow and easy and work your way up to faster, more complicated, however you want to describe it. So many people just get excited right off the bat, like, oh man, I saw this one guy on YouTube. He's a great shooter. He's, doing all these competition things. He's so good. Just give me his stuff, and maybe I'll be that good too. And that's the formula for so many people. And you need somebody in your life to grab a hold of you and be like, calm down here for a second. We've got to start way over and start simple. So we start simple, but like you said, reliability is very important. We want the gun to be reliable, robust. Your training, it needs to be repeatable, so it works on all kinds of different platforms, small guns, larger guns, whatever. When it comes to guns and brand names and kind of what we suggest, I'll start off broad by saying keep it simple at first.
Yeah.
So for example, a Glock is pretty simple. I describe a Glock as a tool. I would describe like a SIG 320 or a 1911. They're more like machines. It's kind of a different. It's not that it's that much difficult to shoot those other guns, but there's just a little more that goes along with that stuff and how they work and how they respond to you as a shooter. So try to stay simple. Don't stay so simple that your gun isn't going to work all the time. And so when we start to offer advice on brand names of guns and it's simple. It's Glock. It's smaller calibers. For a lot of people, for brand new shooters, we do start on smaller calibers like 22 long rifle. Why not? It's easy to shoot. The anxiety level is just almost non-existent. It's like shooting a BB gun. And then people can listen. They can actually listen to what you have to offer as far as instruction and not be so worried about the gun. Just listening and learning the fundamentals of how to shoot. And then you can work your way up to larger calibers, bigger guns, maybe more complex guns that might have safeties or decocking levers or different sight systems or red dots. Things can get complicated pretty quickly. But we need to start off on a platform that's simple and that is repeatable to what you might do in the future.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that's really interesting is people almost attribute their the quality of what they're getting with the price tag of it. And we've seen a lot of guns in our concealed carry classes that are great guns overall, but they're not what you would want to carry with you if you're trying to defend your life, because they have a high rate of failure on the range. One brand name, and I guess we're going to ruin our endorsement deal with Kimber, but Kimber's typically are some of the highest failure rates in a concealed carry class we have. They just, because they're so finely tuned in the machining of the gun, just the smallest amount. It's like a Ferrari. You can't run a Ferrari up and down the street on regular unleaded gas, because it just is gonna break.
Yeah, that's a good example. It's a finely tuned machine,
Yep.
and it's usually operator error,
Yep.
whether it's not taken care of or they don't know how to hold the gun. It can the shooter can induce those malfunctions for sure. But we do see a lot of issues with that. I was in a Red Dot instructor class this April with about a dozen other very highly trained firearms instructors from this area. Some of the best cops I know, some of the best shooters I know I've worked with a lot of these guys, and we had a good group of dudes in this class. We had a wide range of guns, from a stock Glock 17 all the way up to staccatos and red dots and about as high tech as you could get. And as we ran through some of these drills and started to speed up a little bit of what we were doing, I paid attention to see, I wanted to look at the targets and figure out if there was a real correlation. So this information is anecdotal a little bit, but it's good information. It's good data. So we had a dozen guys. We went through some drills where we were shooting a little bit faster, build drill type of drills. And when you would look at the targets, if you were just looking at the targets and trying to figure out who was shooting the best gun, you wouldn't be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. The guns were not giving people the advantage that they thought it would give them. So you'd have somebody shooting a $500 or $600 Glock versus somebody shooting a $3,500 or $4,000 staccato, all tricked out with triggers and red dots and everything, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Now, if those shooters were doing marksmanship drills, like doing bullseyes at 20 yards, might start to see a difference. But in self-defense type training scenarios, I just want to pass along the fact that spending an extra $3,000 on a gun is probably not going to get you where you want to be. And we see a lot of shooters coming out and they're highly disappointed. Like, man, what's going on? How come this isn't working out? Well, it's like, I don't know. How much training have you done? Oh, I've been shooting about 6 months. Man, we need to pump the brakes here and really slow down. This is going to take a while. You're going to have to do some dry fire and some other training and marksmanship and a lot of other things to get you anywhere close. And they're like, well, how long is this going to take? I'm like, I don't know, 10 years? Like
your lifetime?
A big number. Get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready. This is going to take a long time. Now, there are some shooters that pick stuff up really quick, and they're just blessed by God, I guess, with the ability to pull the trigger. And we do see that every once in a while. But we really encourage people, keep it simple, keep it reliable. If you go to, a little farm store and buy a $200 gun, some off-brand name, it's going to let you down.
Yep.
And you're going to wish that it worked. It's not. Now you're starting all over again. And that's where talking to professionals and giving you some decent advice really comes into play. And the hard part is like, well, what professional do I go to? Do I go to cousin Fred, who's a cop down the street, or do I go to this range guy who's, been in the military for 20 years? And I don't know what the answer to that is, really. You have to think about this. If you go to an instructor, a professional, to get some advice, hopefully they spend some time focusing on you, getting to know you a little bit about what you need. If that instructor or professional talks your leg off for an hour about all the things they did, I don't know how this is going to work out. It might not. So that's one way you can kind of vet and test out the people you're going to get advice from. How much time are they spending on you and what's going on? And that's the ultimate goal from the instructor side is we want you to be successful. We want you to have a good time. We want you to continue on down the road and have some positive reinforcement there, not just be a sounding board for me, the instructor, to tell you about everything I've ever done. So when it comes to, basic, short list, if somebody came out to the range where I work and said, hey, Dave, I want to start shooting. What should I shoot? I got to find out what your experience level is, what your background. Have you ever even shot a gun before? Can we jump ahead a few steps and kind of, get started a little bit faster if it's appropriate? We're going to start off with smaller calibers, but we're going to start off with some brand name guns, no doubt about it. This might be a Glock, Smith & Wesson M&P, might be a SIG, might be Springfield, might be things like that we know that we've seen on the range work very well. We just did a concealed carry class the other day, a wide range of guns. When people show up and say they're going to shoot a Glock or a SIG, they're probably going to shoot well. Their guns are probably going to work. Not that they can't break, but versus people that show up with the obvious problems, a Sky, a High Point, even some Rugers or Kel-Tecs, those type of guns. Sometimes they're just difficult for people to get used to. They're small, hard to hold on to. It's hard to learn the fundamentals on some of these subcompact guns. Yep. Learn the fundamentals on a full frame gun. That's where you start off and apply that to the rest of whatever platform you're going to be shooting. So we want people to start off and be successful. We want the gun to work. We want it to be reliable and effective and those things, and then work your way up. It's like, buying a car, and if you want to get a 68 Camaro one day and do a frame-up restoration and tinker and build and all that, awesome. That's kind of the progression where we end up at someday with anything, whether it's guns or cars or whatever. Eventually people want to customize and do those things, which I get all that.
Yeah.
Don't start there. Don't start off trying to get all Gucci gunned out. You're going to kind of set yourself up for success, because what we see is people in those classes, they buy the $4,000 gun, they come to a class, and it's not working because they added a bunch of stuff they shouldn't have. They don't know how to shoot in the first place. And you want to talk about students being embarrassed? Come to class with a $4,000 gun and don't shoot good. People, with the Kel-Tec that have been saying we've been getting a hard time are out shooting you.
Yeah.
And it's not a good place to be. And then all of a sudden, those people shy away. So we want to keep it simple, keep it reliable, robust, repeatable, those type of things, and start from there.
Yeah, I think that one thing you touched on, and I've seen so many, and I hate them too. I do not like subcompact guns. I have a couple of them. I don't like shooting them because my hands they're not gigantic, but they're not small, and they just don't lend themselves to being able to get a grip on those. A smaller subcompact gun is way more snappy recoil, and it's just not a good place to start. And a lot of people, because they want to jump right into the concealed carry world, they're like, I'm just going to get this little tiny gun I can stick in my pocket, and I can go to the supermarket and I don't have to worry about it. But it's not really setting them up for success. I would tend to say, get the largest gun that you can comfortably conceal carry on your body or about your person, and start that there. And then instead of buying a really high-end $4,000 gun, buy training, buy ammunition, get repetition in, because that's going to pay off in the long run way better than having a $4,000 gun.
Yeah, no doubt. If you're starting off and you've got a gun that you can't get a good two-handed grip on, you're going to be disappointed as you move down the road trying to figure this out. So start off with a larger frame gun. So then when we get somebody settled on a gun and what's going to work for them, then it's gear and a holster. And we also want all that stuff to be very simple to start off with. You don't have to have some crazy battle belt, war belt. You show up, and a lot of students show up, and it looks like they just walked off a SEAL Team 6 or something, and they don't even know what they have. They've got, they got this holster they spent $300 on. They got all these competition mag pouches. They got a med kit that's got $500 worth of first aid gear, like they could save 30 people with. They've got knives, and they've got gloves and drop pouches and all this stuff hanging off. It's like, man, we're kind of way beyond what we need to do.
You dropped $3,000 on this war belt, and you could have.
I highly encourage people to get out and train. First thing you're going to need is a decent holster.
Yeah,
no doubt about
absolutely.
it. And just a holster for your regular belt on your jeans. It doesn't have to be some cop or police or SWAT or military holster. It doesn't have to be that. Just an outside the waistband holster, some type of Kydex or strong plastic or whatever holster. that will securely hold your gun. So if you fall down or do cartwheels or whatever you do in training, the gun's not going to fall out. And it's easy to holster the gun without looking at it or manipulating the holster.
Yep.
We see a lot of people come out with a custom or a leather holster where it's just friction from the gun fitting in, and people can't fit the gun in the holster, and then they're sticking their fingers in the holster and then the barrel at their fingers, and it's just this disaster of people trying to reholster the gun. Well, that's not any fun. And you're getting ready to shoot yourself in the stomach. It's a recipe for disaster. So get a solid, firm holster, Kydex, Blackhawk. There's a lot of brand names out there. Safariland, Blackhawk. There's a million of them out there. But get a decent, just regular outside the waistband holster for your regular belt for your jeans. Start with that. It's very simple. You don't have to worry about anything else. And just start with putting magazines in the back pocket of your jeans. You don't have to have all these mag pouches and stuff for starting out, because all that gear is primarily designed for people to do things really quickly. Like, how fast can I reload my gun? Well, that's not what we're starting out with.
Right.
And that might not be where we ever get to.
Yeah.
The basic general principle of our training philosophy is we just want you to be really good at what you're doing.
Yeah. I think that the way that we want to approach training is to build this. And actually, I told you this at our concealed carry class. You mentioned something in the last episode about our pastor talking about up and to the right in our Christian walk. Mm-hmm. The gun training world is exactly the same way. You want to see those little improvements, and you may plateau for a little bit, and then you build on that, and you build on that. And through that journey, eventually you become a very proficient shooter and a very, very well-trained and controlled shooter that can be effective in whatever circumstance that you put them in. And I think that those little stair steps and building the foundation first is the most important thing, because if you go out and you just buy a bunch of gear, you don't know how to use it, then what good is it going to do for you when you actually hit that moment where you need to actually use it and you haven't trained with it and you haven't built in those repetitions of learning how to get to your equipment, how to use your equipment, what works best. I have changed my war belt probably 5 or 6 times because in a training exercise or something, I realized, that really doesn't work the way that I thought it would. Let me move my med pack over here. Okay, I can reach it better. Let me move my gun holster up a little bit so I can get a better draw. I'm not reaching back behind myself. It's all of those little things that only come through actually doing repetition with your equipment.
Yes, and the thing is, sometimes the right tool for the job does make your job easier. When it comes to home construction or electronics or whatever, the right tools for the job do make things easier. But if we just hand you a $300 holster and a $300 belt and $500 worth of other gear and hand it to you, that doesn't mean all of a sudden you know how to use it. There's a learning curve here, and it takes time, just like you're saying, a repetition. So with your, $30 Safariland outside the waistband holster that you buy at Dick's Sporting Goods, you need to spend a lot of time on that before you move on to some more advanced holster or one that's a higher security level, one that's got these buttons and rotating hoods and all this other stuff. You've got to start off with the basic stuff. It's just like Karate Kid, right? Daniel wants to learn karate, and he wants to go beat up the guys in his neighborhood. They're giving him a hard time, and he's ready and motivated. And Miyagi's like, paint this fence for 10 hours. And he doesn't understand that the motions that he's going through are laying the fundamentals for the stuff he's going to be doing later. And firearms training is the same way. You've got to go through the motions. Who wants to go to the range and spend 8 hours drawing your gun out of your holster and putting it back in the holster? Nobody wants to, because that's not exciting and fun. But some point, you have to do that. You have to. Some of us, in law enforcement and military, we have the benefit of we get paid. Hey, go to the range for 8 hours and do these things. You're like, great, cool, I'll go do this. Civilians usually don't have that luxury of all that extra time because you got family and other, commitments and a lot of stuff going on in your life. At some point, you've got to get that in. You've got to start with the basic reps, and so then you can start to add on other gear, other equipment that's going to make things a little more effective and efficient. But we can't blaze past the fundamentals. Gear in this situation, different tools, is not going to make things easier. It's not just magic, and we see that on the law enforcement firing range all the time. Where you get cops come out to shoot a handgun qualification, and they've been cops for 15 years, but they're not very good at weapon handling because we've given them the gears, we've given them the tools, the very efficient, effective, robust, all the things we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not practicing, and they're trying to just hope that it just works out.
Yeah.
And it's not going to. You got to put the time in. You got to put the time in. Be proud of the fact that you're starting off with a $300 or $400 gun and cheap gear, and put the time in. I used to be proud of the fact that I was a kid. When I was playing sports in high school or whatever, like I didn't have the $5,000 gear and equipment.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the underdog. I wanted to show up with the janky stuff and be the guy that beat you with all your highfalutin stuff.
Yeah.
I could not wait. I was so proud. If I could accomplish that, I wanted to prove that to people so much. So, be the guy that's just putting the time in.
Yeah.
And let your experience build first before you go jumping in. It's just part of the journey. You've got to do that. Otherwise, it's just not going to be as effective for you at all.
Yeah. And so we're talking about training. We're talking about, one of the big things that's actually just recently, it's kind of a frustrating moment for me, but ammunition prices had kind of come down and they were getting back to where they were kind of pre-pandemic. Still a little bit higher, but I think that's just, the lovely inflation we're dealing with. We see all of these ammunition prices started to dip down, and then boom, war kicks off. We're sending supplies over to other countries. And just a couple weeks ago, I know that Lake City, which is one of the biggest manufacturers, I think it's like 30% of the manufacturing of ammunition in the United States, basically said, we're cutting off the civilian market for a while. Well, that kind of stinks. And then I think it was whoever owns Federal just sold to a Czechoslovakian company. The whole conglomerate sold to it. Now, they're still going to have their manufacturing processes in the United States, but, you start looking at the political landscape of how they've started trying to ban stuff that's imported and how they're going to play games with that. And so that's a real concern for people. And we talk about repetition, but there are some other practical ways to train and to get repetition in without firing around. So let's talk about that for a little bit, kind of how we can approach, dry fire and those kind of things in a way to still get training in, even when there might be higher priced ammunition or even lack of ammunition out there.
Right. So some of the first things that people think of usually is just, I'll shoot cheaper ammo. I'll go get a gun, I'll shoot 22, I'll get a Glock 44 or get whatever 22 caliber semi-automatic handgun or revolver if you want to, and just start practicing with that. And that does have some good training value to it. Probably what has even more training value is just what we call dry practice or dry fire, and not necessarily even just trigger control, but just going through the motions of getting your gun presented to the target, getting the gun out of the holster, going through reholstering, going through handling your magazines, all the weapon handling skills. You can do that. We had a guy in a class the other day. It was a rifle class we did. He had an AK-47, never shot it live before, but he'd spent a lot of time just going through dry practice, going through magazine changes, going through malfunction drills. And he came up to do a drill we were doing. He went to fire a round, got a click, didn't fire. He immediately went into an immediate action drill, dropped the magazine, put a new one, chambered a new round, and fired. It looked like he had done it probably 1,000 times. He said, that was the first time I'd ever had to do a malfunction drill live fire with this gun. I was like, wow, that's pretty good. He goes, yeah. I said, I've spent a lot of time in the mirror doing this. I'm like, well, that's why that went so well.
Yep. Because
it wasn't really, honestly, the first time he'd ever been through it. It was the first time live fire, but he had already done it 1,000 times. So it's proof that that type of training is valuable and that it works and that it does help lay that foundation for you. It's an integral part. It might be, I don't know what the percentage is of how much of your training is dry and how much is live fire on the range. I think honestly, some people say 40 or 50 or 60% should be dry. I don't think most people are going to meet that standard, honestly. So, you just need to pick 30 minutes or an hour once a month or whatever the time is, and go through the motions. Here's the tricky part. You got to go through the motions the right way.
Yes.
It's got to be good practice. It can't be something you just made up on your own. It's got to be, in our classes, the way we instruct is we want to give people the fundamentals, the right ones, and you know how to do things correctly so that you can go home and you can practice. We just want to get you set on the tracks and push you in the right direction.
Yep.
And then you can power yourself as much or as little as you want to. And we hear a lot of people say, I was a self-taught shooter. And it doesn't really mean that they taught themselves to shoot. It means that somebody, somewhere, an instructor, YouTube, whatever, somebody showed them the right way to do things, and then they just went out and practiced that on their own for hours and hours and hours. And it's not really self-taught. It's like self-practice, self-trained, whatever. I think there's different wording that fits better there, but it's critical. So get in front of a mirror in your house and practice drawing your gun at yourself in front of a mirror. You can actually see what you're doing. Get a video camera, set your iPhone up on a tripod or set it on a table and video record yourself drawing your gun and look at it. And you'll probably look at it and be like, wow, I look dumb. This is not working out so good. Like, this does not look like my instructor was doing it or how so-and-so was doing it. We do a lot of video review in our classes, and it's absolutely, mind-blowing for some people. Like, I never knew I was doing that, or I look like that, or what I should be doing. And it's not just the video of the shooting aspect, it's video of all the mechanics. And so the video review is critical. We do a lot of that in our classes. It's very important. If you're an instructor out there and you're doing classes and you're not using video of some sort to record your students and then show it to them and then review what they should not be doing, tell them what they should be doing, you've got to add that to your training right now.
Yep.
It's critical. It should be a part of everybody's training out there. And if you're not, you need to jump on that.
Yeah, and I think that generally I watch a couple of guys on YouTube, and the other day saw this reel pop up, and the guy says, if it doesn't look cool, you're probably tactically wrong. Because typically if you're tactically sound, it kind of looks cool. So if you look dumb in the mirror, you probably are not doing it.
Yeah,
right.
I've heard that. Maybe it'll look, I don't know if look cool is right, but it should look normal. I think people have a natural tendency to understand what good shooters look like.
Yeah.
And when you look at yourself on video, it should look like you know what you're doing. And if it looks a little weird or off, or then maybe you're like, maybe I need to work on this.
I think maybe you could probably say something like, if it looks confident, if it looks like you're meaning to do what you're going to do, if you're kind of fumbling with your gun, bent over half, not paying attention to your target and all that stuff. Yeah, you probably need to work on some of that. But if you look like you mean what you're doing and you're actually getting the gun where it needs to go and all that stuff, you look tactical, we'll say.
Yeah, so definitely our suggestion as far as training goes is, if all you have, if the only time you have is to watch YouTube, I don't know if I want to sit here and give a list of people I would suggest to watch.
Righteous Savages.
Righteous Savages, number one for sure. So here's what you've got going on. You've got competition shooters, and then you've got law enforcement and military shooters. And there is kind of a mix of those worlds, more today than ever. And I think both of those groups have learned from each other, no doubt about it. Both of those groups have very specific purposes. Their missions are different. So you can't just say, well, competition shooters are better than cops or military. It just depends on what you're about to go do, no doubt about it. The competition guys have really got gear figured out real well. They've got training and practice and hours of that repetition figured out very well. And, military cops have got, I would say, maybe mindset figured out a little bit better, because one's life and death, one's just for fun. And so you got to understand what you're doing and what your purpose is there. And it's definitely different. So when you're out there looking for instructors and all you have for time is the internet, look for, anybody that's got, world champion behind their name is probably pretty good as far as on the competition side of things. Rob Latham is a guy that I've met and talked to a few times, and I think as far as the competition guys, he's got a really good mindset and attitude, and his training is very simple and very straightforward. And he kind of gets through all the BS out there and that you kind of see in the training world these days. And he's a good dude to kind of watch videos on for sure.
Yeah, I think that fusion of competition and military, you get a wealth of knowledge. I think there's a lot of guys out there. I'm going to do a shameless plug here because we got some things coming up that are going to be in this wheelhouse. We are we're starting the process of recording some things that are going to be available on our Patreon that's going to launch here before too long. So we're going to be doing some of this stuff that's going to be available to people. We're also going to post some of that stuff for free on the internet for sure. We've already started doing some of that stuff, both on our page, and we also have the Tombstone page on YouTube. So you can follow both of those as good tools for things that we do. And we're going to be doing more and more of that as we go. So we would love for everybody to kind of follow us and check out what we do. Yeah. Not that we have all the answers, but I think that we do have a good broad wealth of knowledge in the shooting world that can help people.
And like we said, here's the deal. A lot of people just don't have a lot of time. They're at work. Maybe they find an hour at work to get on the whole internet and check out some shooting videos. Maybe they have a little bit of time at home in the evening and they're trying to figure this out. They don't have all the time in the world to get to a class somewhere. And we are going to offer that information to you guys through video and give you some video instruction on a lot of things involved in the shooting world. So we are going to give you good, valuable stuff based on all of our years of experience. We'll talk to you a little bit more about where we came from and what our experience is. And it's important to know, like, who taught us? Like, where did we come up with this information? Is this just shooting according to Dave and John? Or what is our pedigree? What is our background? Where do we come from? And so we're going to give you all that information there and let you use us as a resource for that information. And it's gonna be good, fun information, gonna be entertaining, and we want everybody to have a good time. We want you to learn correctly. We want you to learn the fundamentals, be responsible gun owners, and it's gonna be a good, valuable resource for everybody.
Yeah, and if you're in the Midwest too, that's another thing that I'll do another shameless plug. We have a gun range that we train at. Dave is the owner of the gun range, and we're doing classes all the time. We have several classes coming up, and you can hit that website. If you're in the Midwest, we live in the southern tip of Illinois, and basically within an hour of like 4 states. And so you can get to our location fairly easily, fairly quickly. Our classes are very reasonably priced, but you get a lot of bang for your buck with them. And come out and do some training with us. We'd love to help you figure out the start of this journey, or if you're a little bit on the way of the journey and you don't know what the next step is, we'd love to help you out with that. We pride ourselves on always being innovative and learning new things. We learn new things all the time, and if we think it's a valuable thing, we infuse it into our training for sure.
For sure. And I would say on the military side of the YouTube and internet training, I would probably suggest Fieldcraft Survival, and Mike Glover is the owner. I will say that I do work for them from time to time. But as far as, as a 29-year law enforcement veteran, sometimes we see guys in the military that their training does not really fit the law enforcement world very well. And from seeing Mike's side of things and how he trains and kind of his philosophy, it fits real well into the law enforcement world as well. So I would definitely check out a lot of Mike Glover or Fieldcraft Survival YouTube videos, training. It's really good stuff. I would highly recommend that to anybody out there getting started, to give you a good foundation for kind of the philosophy and tactics and techniques that we talk about in our training as well.
So real quick, couple questions here. Let's hit a couple of tiers as far as, like, if you had this amount of money, what would be prioritized? We're going to go through a couple of them. Sure. So let's start off at, like, you got $500. What prioritization do people need to put into $500 to get into shooting? I know that's a low.
$500 probably would not quite get you to the type of gun that I would recommend right at first. Is close. $600 $600 will probably buy you just about any full size Glock out there at Smith & Wesson, M&P, Springfield, you're kind of talking that $600 neighborhood for a pretty decent gun to start off with.
Yep.
Just right out of the box. So I would start with, let's just call $600 here, John.
Yeah. Okay.
$600 will probably get you started with a gun and be in pretty good shape there. And then beyond that, it's obviously buying some ammo, starting to stockpile. And what you'll see right now, as of the taping of this video, ammo prices, thanks to Lake City, some other things, the war in Israel, everything's kind of shaking up a little bit. Prices are going up a little bit. And every time this happens, we're like, 3 months ago would have been a really good time to just spend $500 on some ammo or whatever. We see this cycle. It goes up and down with world crisis, with COVID was the last time, 2020, 2021. You couldn't find a 22 round anywhere. It was crazy. And then it got back down to, 5-6 months ago, ammo's everywhere and nobody's really buying it. And maybe we should have been buying, everybody should have been buying more.
I know I kick myself every day.
Yeah, so start looking at it. You don't have to buy a case of ammo. Buy 2 boxes of 9mm ammo the next time you go to whatever store you're at.
Yeah.
Do that. It's just like saving money. Just get a little bit of a time as you go. And then buy you just a little bit of gear, just a decent. You could just buy a really good leather belt from like 511 or somewhere for $50, and then get you some type of holster. The cool thing with the brand name guns, Glock, Springfield, Smith & Wesson, SIG, you can find gear and accessories for that stuff all over the place. It is endless. You start buying, the Canics and the and the whatever's out there, even staccatos, even some other things, it becomes difficult to find the accessories, the everyday stuff that you might need for that. Just iron sights. Well, good luck with some of those guns. You might not find them. A holster that will fit a gun with a light for those off-brand, even the Walthers and stuff like that, the guns that seem pretty popular that we see a lot. People have a very hard time buying accessories for those things. So you've got to keep that in mind. But start off your gun, some ammo, a decent belt, a decent holster. That's really probably the top 4 things I would go for and to start off. So you're probably really, honestly, for all of that, thinking about, $1,000.
Yep.
And so maybe it takes you 3 or 4 months to accumulate that, or you get your income tax return back or your next COVID check or whatever, who knows what.
Yeah.
And just get started. Do not save up your $3,000 and then go dump $3,000 on some Gucci gun that you haven't even learned how to shoot a gun yet.
Yeah.
Just get started with the basics. Don't go buy a red dot sight right off the bat. Start off with iron sights, please. And I've had some people say, well, why not just start with red? I mean, just if that's what everybody's going to, just get a red dot and be a new student and just learn that process so it's not hard later on. And I would just advise people that I just think that's backwards. A red dot it's an extremely dynamic tool. It's not complicated. It's just a red dot in your vision, but it's complex. The system for using that and how your brain and your eyes and your body and all that works is complex. Lining up iron sights is not. And so we want you thinking not that you can't learn how to use a red dot earlier in your shooting career, but doing that it's like taking up a bunch of memory in the hard drive of your brain to work that system. With iron sights, it doesn't take a lot. It's very simple to compute. And so if there's less anxiety and you're using less brain power for the aiming process, you can actually listen to what the instructor is telling you. You can remember to focus on the fundamentals. Your learning process will go quicker, I believe, shooting with iron sights as opposed to starting off with red dots. So that's my take on it. I don't know. I've heard some people say, man, just start with a red dot and go from there and things will be a lot better. But to me, I'm kind of old school. I just like the progression of starting off simple, basic, the way things have always been. And I've got red dots on guns. I'm not anti-red dot by any means. But and also think of most of the students and shooters out there. If you've been in the military for 15 years on some special team overseas and you decide you want to start using a red dot for the first time, you might pick this up a lot quicker than somebody that has just started learning to shoot. And so anytime things get complicated and we start giving students a lot of things to think about and focus on, it's just, I promise you, it's brain meltdown for a lot of people. And then it's a struggle, and then it's like frustrating. And we don't want struggle and frustrating to happen with new shooters.
Right.
We just don't. And 1 out of 100 might pick it up great and it's like the best thing ever. But don't start off with that high-tech stuff. Don't get a light for your gun. Don't get a red dot. Don't buy fiber optic sights. If you bought a Glock with the janky plastic sights on it, start with that. Start with those. That's cool. We can work through this. Like I said, I wanted to be the guy that had the janky equipment. Like, all right, if you think red dot's the way to go, then I'm going to work these iron sights better than you ever seen, and I'm going to smoke you out here on the range. Yeah. That was my attitude. I want to learn. If it's harder to shoot with iron sights, teach me to do that, because I want to get really good at that and show you, that I'm better than you. I was like, I always wanted to be the person with the inferior gear that could go up against other people for whatever reason. I just felt like so many people thought they could buy the magic thing, the magic tool, and just be better. And I didn't want to be that guy. So learn the systems. Learn the iron sights first, my suggestion, and then move on to red dot at some point. And that might be 3 years after you start. Maybe it might be 3 months, but don't get too crazy. And all I'm saying is we see students that come to our classes in our range, they'll buy some gun and put a high fluting red dot on it, and we spend all day long just... Now we're like, okay, we're going to try and teach you how to find this red dot. Even though they can't pull the trigger very good, they can't work their gun very good, they can't manipulate magazines very well, they can't draw their gun very well. We need to be focusing on those things, but now we're spending all day long talking about how to find the red dot on their gun because they can't even see what they're shooting at. Yeah. So it can just cause some issues for newer shooters. Just start simple.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that we talked about with dry fire that also can apply to, because a lot of the times that we see those students come out, they haven't practiced with the red dot at home. You can do that. You can practice your presentation with a red dot at home 1,000 times, 2,000 times. And I think if you're not doing that, then it's going to be detrimental if you do finally make that transition to a red dot, not practicing with it, learning how to get that red dot up into your vision and actually present the gun the right way. I think it's something that causes problems, and learning how to just use iron sights, tried and true. It's been around for hundreds of years. Since firearms were invented, we had iron sights, and they're never really gonna go away, I don't think, because the other thing to think about with red dots is they have batteries. One of these days, those batteries are going to run out. And they're going to always run out at the most inopportune time.
I was listening to a podcast with Ken Hackathorn a few weeks ago. He's been in the shooting world for a long time, and he's like, we see all these trends. I think it was on the Wilson Combat Channel or something. He's like, we've got all these different sights. Lasers were the big thing. He goes, remember everybody had lasers on their guns? So anybody have lasers on their gun nowadays? On your rifle, maybe. But nobody's running a laser on a handgun. Said so. He's like, I've got red dots. I shoot them, but we'll see what happens. Red dots have kind of, we're talking about having them around a good decade now, so they're kind of, passing the test of time a little bit. But all it takes is the next thing, the next gadget, the next sighting system. Who knows? It might be a hologram or something that gets projected. Who knows what the next thing will be? There will be a next thing. And all of a sudden, everybody will be ripping red dots off their guns. So just never think that what you have is the greatest thing and it's always going to be around forever. Try to have the perspective of, this is a tool that I put on my gun. It's, I'm going to see if I can make it work. I want to be good at it. Yeah. And go from there.
I don't think I want to put an AI sight on my gun. I just don't trust it enough yet.
Just close your eyes. It's going to, go to your Neuralink in your brain and tell you where to point the gun.
Oh, that's creepy stuff. Stuff. For sure. Let's talk real quick about stockpiling ammo. I know we talked a little bit about it in conversation earlier. I think stockpiling ammo is something that people always think about, and myself full disclosure, I tend to lean towards the prepper mindset in a little bit. I'm not that hardcore dude that bought a 1968 missile silo and is planning on housing 300 people for the end of the world. But I do believe in preparedness, and 2020 kind of got me back into that and a little bit. I learned how to can. I learned how to garden. I knew how to garden from before, but I kind of like greased those wheels again and started learning and just kind of trying to be as self-sufficient as possible. So part of that is, I think we're looking at ammo shortages, possibly increasing prices. How do you build a stockpile in those kinds of situations? I think what you said, what you said earlier was, when you go to Rural King or you go to wherever, Academy Sports or Dick's Sporting Goods, get a couple boxes. It's not as big of a deal as dropping $500 on 1,000 rounds of this or $1,000 on 2,000 rounds or whatever. It's a little bit easier to do that as you go. I think generally for me, and you may have a different approach, but for me, I always want to kind of get a baseline. So my baseline's like 1,000 rounds for each caliber. It actually may be a little bit more than that now, but that's where I started, was 1,000 rounds. I want to build up 1,000 rounds. Then every time I go shoot, I want to refill whatever I've shot. And then I just maintain that. It's kind of like with a bank account. Sometimes you take $1,000 off the, that used to be kind of the old balancing thing. You put $1,000 in it, and then you zero it out, and that's your baseline. It's there, but it's like your emergency.
Right. So the 1,000 rounds means you have zero ammo. Because you're never going to touch that. That's always going to be there for the zombie apocalypse that's going to happen, the worst case scenario. And I think that's a pretty good, if you decide to have 20,000 rounds of 9mm ammo, good luck taking that somewhere with you. Like, okay, when the air raid sirens go off and you're like, crap, we got to leave and get to the country, or whatever your bug out plan is, like, well, how are you going to load, like, how are you going to move that? Maybe you have a trailer set up that's geared with all your stuff. I don't know. But for most people, you're not going to be able to move around just tons and tons of ammo. Most people, but some people might say, I'm never leaving. Like, this is where I'm bugging out to, is this place. So I've got all the ammo in the world. To me, it's crazy to think that there's a situation out there where you might need, for your own survival, 30,000 rounds of AK ammo. If you need that to survive, I don't know if I want to survive this thing or not.
Live in that world, Heaven sounds a lot better than that.
This is a bad thing that's about to go down. So I think being prepared, having enough ammo is going to help us in the times when things are kind of bad. And who knows what that level of kind of bad is. Yeah. And worst case scenario where the world is crazy and it's civil war and people are trying to take over the country and whatever you imagine is worst case, then it's going to be tough to figure out what would be enough. In that case, nothing would be enough. Right. You would never have enough of everything to make it through a year or 2 or 5 of the worst case scenario necessarily. So be reasonable about it. Be smart about it. If you're running around with $100 in your pocket and you can take 20 and throw it in a jar, and like, that's my ammo money, and then every 3 months take your ammo money and go buy your 300 rounds or whatever, and stick that in the corner. If you go to the store like, oh, it'd be great, they've got this sale for 1,000 rounds of 5.56 for $400 or whatever. Well, you might not have $400 right then in your budget. Like, I got rent coming up. I wish I could. So save up for that. Save a few bucks every month, and then pick a time. Like, okay, every 3 months, then I'm gonna go take this money that I've saved up and go buy ammo if you can. If it's tough, things are tight for you, whatever. So generally, that's why I kind of advise people: don't go too crazy. Don't be thinking you somehow have to have 10,000 rounds of 9mm or whatever. But try and get 1,000 or 2, because you might end up going to some training where they say you need 600 rounds of ammo. Well, there we go, man. We just dropped our stockpile down. It took quite a big hit. So buy that stuff early and often when it's cheap, and be reasonable about it. Yeah.
I know we went through some ammo and some of our just setting up training stuff. We've gone through some rounds on that, so that's always a possibility.
Yep. So back to the tiers, like the first tier, like $600, $1,000. What do you get? Part of that money should be training with a professional firearms instructor. It doesn't even have to be a class. Usually the classes are more expensive. So if you wanted to get into, some famous YouTube celebrity firearms class, it might be $300, $400, $500 for a class. And then you're in the class with 20 other people. And there's one instructor that you really want to learn from. And in that 5-hour class, that one instructor comes and talks to you like maybe 2 times. And so who knows if you get necessarily what you thought you were going to get out of that class. The cool thing about classes is you're with a lot of people, like-minded folks. It's fun. It's more of a good time. It's more of entertainment value. It's more of that. If you're really wanting to develop yourself more, find an instructor and do a one-on-one lesson or instruction. And usually that costs a lot less. You get a lot more out of it. It's personalized to you, your gun. Nobody else is there. So find a pro instructor somewhere at a range nearby, like Tombstone Gun Range in Marion, Illinois.
Shameless plug.
Yes, and come out and get a lesson and get all the juicy details of what you really need to know, the advice about gear and equipment and what to do on your next training. When it comes to training, what I tell people is this is not like piano lessons. Like if you decide, we've sat here and told you how learning to shoot is a long journey, and it is, but it's more of a long journey of self-evaluation and personal development. But like piano lessons or horseback riding lessons, it seems like when you sign up for that, you're in it for a long time. My kids have taken piano lessons. This is like 3 or 4 or 5 years or more that people are in this. So you don't necessarily need that with firearms training. What you need is for somebody to tell you the right way to do things. Like, here's how to do this. Here's what it looks like the correct way. You figure that out, write it down, take some video, whatever, and boom, you're off to the races. And a lot of people, we see people come to a lot of our training classes over and over because they like who we are. They like the group of people that show up to training. It's more of an event. It's a social thing, and that's cool. We love that. We love developing the community of like-minded people that love the shooting sports, and that's just a good time. We do the tactical weekend at Tombstone a couple times a year. Come out, shoot, hang out, cook food, sit around the campfire, tell war stories, talk about our families, and that's building a community. And on a side note, if you're talking about prepping and getting ready for the worst-case scenario, it's not – having a community of people you can rely on is 100 times more important than having 20,000 rounds of ammo stuck in a corner somewhere, because you need people that can help you out and can provide things for you that you don't have. And so that's where that community is very important.
Yeah, I think so. I think that building the community is probably the most important in survival, and anybody that knows what they're talking about in that realm is going to tell you the same thing, that having a community, because there's people out there that know how to take down any kind of prep that you could set up or anything. If they really want your stuff, they're going to come and get it. But having a community, it's harder to take from many than it is to take from one. So, that's really important. I think we'll close out with just kind of talking. We always want to tie this back to our beliefs and our faith, and kind of how we approach this idea of training to defend ourselves, and how we fuse that with our faith, and how we believe that both are important in being a well-rounded person in this world that's kind of going crazy right now.
Yeah, so I guess we can take a step back and kind of take a big 30,000-foot view of kind of what we believe and why we're doing this, and when it relates to the basic stuff of our jobs, our training, the firearms training we do at the range, and kind of our mindset and philosophy behind what we do. So as a Christian, I believe that one of our primary responsibilities is to treat people the way we want to be treated. We call it the golden rule. Like, how should we treat people, and why do we do that? Why are we nice to people? Why do we care about people? Why do we help take care of each other? Because that's what Jesus would do. And it sounds real simple. Sometimes it sounds corny. Like I said before in one of our episodes, I didn't grow up in church, and anything that had to do with Jesus or any type of war, I felt like it was like churchy. Like even the word Jesus to me was like just a churchy thing to say. But in reality, we believe that Christianity is real. Jesus is the only way, is the only true God, the only way to heaven. And so on a day-to-day basis, the way that affects me is like, well, what are we here for? What are we on this planet for? Is it just random that we're here with no purpose? Or is our purpose something? Now, everybody has their own gifts in life. Like, what were you gifted to do? Some people are gifted to be teachers. Some people, to be pastors. Some people to do other things, to, serve others. And so you figure out what your gift is. And I think for me personally, my gift is being able to connect to people and teach them things. And specifically in my aspect, it's teaching them how to be effective and efficient and safe and defending themselves with firearms and caring about people. When we started the range, when we started Tombstone Gun Range in 2013, there was really nothing like it around. There wasn't a range that had an office that was open where people could come out and interact with the people running the range. And I'd visited a lot of other gun shops and ranges across all over the United States in my law enforcement career. And most of the time you'd walk into a gun shop or a range, there was a couple old guys sitting in the corner, and they probably wouldn't even look at you, or they would look at you like, what are you doing here? And it was like this attitude of, it wasn't really hate, but it was definitely they didn't care.
Yeah.
Didn't care. And we operate under the system of like, we actually care about you as a person, and hopefully we can get you into our group, of like-minded people. And then we want to, make sure that you're okay as a person. We want to treat you like you want to be treated and care about what you care about as a person. When you come into the office, or we just meet you, it's like, hey, how's it going? Have a conversation. And it's about you. It's not just about listening to me talk about who I am. It's about you. Is somebody, meeting your needs? Is somebody, answering questions that you got? Is somebody nice to you? We have so many people that come out to our place that just come in. I was at the range this morning. A couple people come in, just sit down at the table, and they're there to hang out because they just want to hang out and talk about stuff. There's not a whole lot of places like that you can go. And so as a Christian, I'm always trying to focus on treating people with respect and the way they want to be treated, and like a friend. And hopefully people will see that and wonder, why is he treating me this way?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? Why is this person nice to me? Why do they care about me? Why are they helping me out? And the reason is because Jesus has basically saved us, forgiven us, given us grace. And if I've received that gift from him, how come I can't give that to other people?
Absolutely.
And so that's our whole purpose, is to treat people that way and hopefully guide them to our faith because of who we are. And people see that. They see the light in us, and we guide them towards Christianity.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that our slogan here is act like you believe. And that's based off of a verse in James where it talks about they'll know you by how you act, by who you are. And I think that in every aspect of our life, we as Christians, a lot of times we get this rap that we're just Christians on Sunday morning. And I think that that's the polar opposite of what I want to be in my approach. I want to carry my worldview of Christ and Christianity to every part of my life, everywhere I go, whether it's, at the gas station or at my job or at the basketball game or at in the polling booth. And we'll get into that even more as we go along, of like that we need to be engaged in all of these aspects, but we need to actually always look through the lens of what our worldview is through Christ. And I think that that's the most important part of, like, they're gonna know us. They're gonna know who we are because of what we carry with us. And having that, I think, is the biggest testimony we can have as Christians to make people wonder, oh, what's different? Like you said earlier, what's different about this guy? Why is this guy treating me this way? Why is this person being kind to me? They don't even know me. But I think that is the most important thing. I actually had a great opportunity today to help a lady jump her car. She was sitting there trying to figure out, I had just gotten some documents printed at the print shop and was coming out to see that she needed, and just got a chance to jump her car, and I got a chance to say, hey, have a blessed day. Jesus loves you. I said that. Just a small thing. And it sounds kind of Christian and churchy, but you don't know that impact that could have had on her in her life. So those are the little things, the little opportunities that we have to rub up against people in everyday life and say, hey, I'm a follower of Christ, and I proudly wear that banner.
Yeah, and life is too short. Well, I'm starting to realize my age. I'm retired now. The clock is ticking. I understand that you only have so many days on this planet, and what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do with that time? Life is too short to not stand up for what you believe is right. If you are a Christian and you believe a certain way, I don't think we're meant to keep that to ourselves. No. That we're supposed to grow that. We're supposed to invest that in ourselves and other people and grow the kingdom of God. And it doesn't mean when we sit here and we say these things, I do not want people to think that we're saying we're perfect, we've got it all figured out, we're better than anybody. Please do not think that. We are just like every other human on the planet. We're flawed just like everybody else, and we need God. And we need Him every single day.
Yeah.
Just because we're like, hey, you're having a good day and we believe this way, it doesn't mean it's perfect and we have it all figured out. And the cool thing is that while we're in a group together like this with righteous savages and people that want to join in with who we are, then we can help support each other.
Yep.
And we can help each other get through hard times and adversity and temptation and all those things that, everybody deals with on a daily basis. And that's what we want to really stress to people is we need each other. And this is not easy. And there's a lot of things we're all going through right now. And that's hopefully we're going to try and build this community so that we can reach out to each other and help each other on a daily basis get through life and get through our faith and get through everything that's tough out there for us. So please don't think that we're trying to tell you we're better than anybody. We're not. But we do believe that Jesus is the King of the universe, and we are here for a reason. Your life is not random. It's not just by accident. We're here. We're here for a purpose, and God's got a plan, and we don't necessarily know what it is, but we know that there's a plan in place, and we want to encourage people to follow Jesus and have Him direct your life as much as possible.
Yeah.
And the result is it's not always perfect. It doesn't mean you become a Christian and your life is better. But, man, to think about what is real out there as far as, like, what's out there in the universe, what's the purpose of my life. If it's nothing, if it's just blank randomness, that's going to be a pretty, ultimately, I don't want to be mean about it, but what kind of future is that to look forward to? It's kind of the bland side of things versus the future of eternity in heaven. I mean, come on, what's the argument here? What do we, and what's in worst case scenario? I don't believe this way, but what if I became a Christian and it turned out that wasn't true? What have I lost in my life? Did I waste my life? Did things get worse for me? No, things probably were a lot better for me anyway.
Yep.
So I've got nothing to lose. And when you live your life like you've got nothing to lose, all of a sudden your performance and your attitude and everything just exponentially gets better.
Yeah. I'd just like to point out that I am perfect. Just ask my wife.
I'm surprised you're not wearing the shirt or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, that's farthest from the truth.
Let me see.
Yeah.
What's her phone number?
Yeah. Get her on speakerphone and we'll see how
the show right now.
Yeah, how perfect she thinks I am.
She is going to watch this.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, the next episode is just going to be me.
Yeah.
John's going to be recovering.
Yeah. I might have a few black eyes and a broken arm.
I'll beat down for sure. Good luck.
That's all great stuff, and we're going to continue on talking and diving deeper into some of these issues of going out into the world and carrying your worldview, a Christian worldview, out into the masses. So, but I think we're out of time today, and I'd just like to thank everybody once again for stopping by and checking out our episode 3 of the Righteous Savages podcast. Continue to get the word out. Continue to like and follow us. Hit up our website. I actually talked to our printer last Friday, and it looks like our shirts are going to be in very soon. So you might see us wearing those the next time we record. They're pretty cool, and hopefully you guys are interested in those. We'll have them up on our website for online purchase, and you can also hit us up, anybody that knows us personally, and we'll get you hooked up with one. And the bracelets will also be online for you to just kind of wear and just
I call them wristbands.
Wristbands,
Bracelet
yes.
sounds a little...
Yeah, it sounds a little girly,
doesn't sound very savage.
Yeah. Wristbands.
Sure.
So we have those available for anybody that is interested in just kind of wearing that and just letting that be a message that you can send out.
I have. People.
Yep.
I appreciate you guys that have gotten hold of them so far and representing. It's cool, man. We appreciate it.
Yep. So we'll see you guys next time. And don't forget, as you're going through life, act like you believe. And always remember that Jesus wants us to carry him everywhere we go.